Shooter, and I'm the founder of Empower Total Health. And what I want to talk to you about today is this advice that people who are struggling with their weight are all too often given, which is that they should eat less and move more. I've had a problem with the first part of that advice for some time. Now, clearly, if a person is overweight, they need to be eating less kilojoules, less calories, less energy. But the only sustainable way to do this is not to eat less as in smaller portions, because no one can walk around feeling hungry all the time, but to eat more foods that are energy dilute. That is, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes that take up a lot of space, that have a lot of volume for a small amount of calories. I've written an article about this called Caloric Density, the Key to Weight Loss Success, which you might want to take a look at for more information on utilizing energy density for weight loss. So that's the eat less part of the equation. The move more part of the equation is also currently under heavy attack. According to an article published in the February 2017 edition of Scientific American, which is titled The Exercise Paradox, human beings who expend more kilojoules, more energy, through exercise simply burn less in other daily activities, resulting in virtually no net difference in energy output, whether you're a sedentary couch potato or a marathon runner. The article's author, an anthropologist by the name of Herman Ponce, studied energy expenditure in the Hadza, who are traditional hunter-gatherers of northern Tanzania, actually one of the last remaining populations of hunter-gatherers on Earth, although it would be more accurate to call them gatherer-hunters, because as Ponce points out, the men make a large kill roughly once a month, even though they're pretty good hunters as these things go, meaning that the plant foods gathered by the women and the children, and I presume the elderly men as well, so these are mostly wild berries and leaves and tubers, actually make up the vast bulk of the Hadza's food intake. Ponce and his co-authors used the gold standard method for measuring the kilojoules that are burnt in normal daily life. It's called the doubly labeled water method. And what they discovered was that despite incredibly high levels of daily physical activity in both sexes, Hadza men ate and burned off about 2,600 calories, which is roughly 10,900 kilojoules per day. And Hadza women ate and burned off about 1,900 calories, which is about 8,000 kilojoules a day, which is the same as adults in the US or Europe whose lives are far more sedentary than the Hadza. Now, Ponce was formerly a believer in this conventional wisdom that physical inactivity is a primary driver of the obesity epidemic that's plaguing both developed countries like Australia and the US and Western Europe, but also developing countries such as those in Africa. And after they had their results analysed and they realised that the Hadza were not, in fact, burning off more calories than the average Western person, he discovered that his team's findings were neither revolutionary nor particularly novel. Other researchers had already used this method. They'd used the doubly labeled water technique to study energy expenditure in traditional farmers, so people doing pretty heavy manual labor in Guatemala, Bolivia, and the Gambia. And they found that the energy expenditure in these very active people was about the same as that of city dwellers. In 2008, a study was published that found that rural Nigerian women, despite being far more physically active than African American women living in Chicago, expended about the same amount of energy per day once you adjusted for differences in weight. And a review of data from 98 studies from all over the world that was published in 2011 confirmed that people living in developed countries, despite all their labor-saving devices and their sedentary jobs, have similar energy expenditures to people living in less developed countries whose daily lives entail far more physical demands. What this means for you is that if you've been meticulously tracking your daily energy intake, say with a tracking app like Chronometer, and also tracking your energy expenditure on your Fitbit, or if you've been buying that chocolate cake with the kilojoules that you burned on the Stairmaster at the gym, you've been wasting your time. As Ponce discovered when, in a subsequent study, he equipped over 300 volunteers with a fitness tracker, like a Fitbit, and measured their daily energy expenditure with the doubly labelled water, and did that for a whole week. He found, this is a quote, that their daily physical activity, tracked by the accelerometers, which is your Fitbit type devices, was only weakly related to metabolism. He found that people who were moderately active, took the stairs, went for a walk a couple times a week, burned an extra 200 calories, about 840 kilojoules per day, compared to couch potatoes. That, by the way, is the amount of calories that you'd find in just over a tablespoon of oil, not much. The shocking finding was that people with the highest activity levels from intense physical exercise expended the same number of kilojoules per day as those who had moderate activity levels. I'll give you a minute to let that sink in. It turns out that the same phenomenon has been documented in numerous other species, including non-human primates like chimpanzees and gorillas and orangutans, also in sheep, in kangaroos, and in giant pandas. So whether you keep these animals captive in a pen or a zoo, or they're out roaming in the wild, expending a lot of energy either trying to find food or trying to avoid becoming food, all of these mammals show similar daily energy expenditures. Now, none of the researchers who are involved in this field fully understand these phenomena, but what they're assuming at this point is that each species has certain constraints on energy expenditure that relate to trade-offs in structure and function of each species. For example, humans consume and expend about 400 calories, which is a little under 1700 kilojoules, more each day than our closest relatives, bonobos and chimpanzees, and that's after adjusting for differences in body size. And most of this extra energy is diverted towards fueling our larger brains, which are very hungry, glucose-devouring machines that actually consume a lot of our energy at rest. Now, don't get me wrong, none of this means that exercise is a bad thing. I'm not down on exercise, neither is Herman Ponce. I include exercise in all of my clients' treatment plans because it offers a host of benefits, such as improving the strength of your muscles and bones, which guards against age-related frailty, which, by the way, is the major reason that people end up in nursing homes. It also reduces the risk of osteoporosis-related bone fractures. It prevents age-related cognitive decline and dementia. It improves the quality of sleep. It boosts your mood, your thinking ability, your self-esteem. I've written a lot of articles on the benefits of exercise, which you can find in my article library. Many of these benefits of exercise, especially the positive impact that it exerts on sleep and mood and self-esteem, do make it easier to lose weight and keep it off. But the bottom line is that when it comes to losing weight, as Dr. John McDougall has been saying for decades, it's the food. Or, as Herman Ponce puts it, all of this evidence points toward obesity being a disease of gluttony rather than sloth. Exercising more is not going to solve the obesity crisis, either for an individual or at a population level. To solve that crisis, we need to fix the food. Switching to a whole food, plant-based diet, which draws most or even all of its energy from fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes, is a well-proven, highly effective solution for permanent weight loss. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it stimulating, maybe even a little challenging. I'd love to read your comments. Please place them below. And do like this video, share it in your social networks, and I will catch up with you for next week's weekly update.